Opposition politician Job Sikhala has alleged that there have been attempts on his life amid the country's escalating political crisis. Sikhala was speaking at a media briefing in Johannesburg in neighbouring South Africa, where he claimed that he has been targeted for his outspoken criticism of President Emmerson Mnangagwa's administration and proposed constitutional amendments.
Last week I received some security reports from the agencies of the state that they were feverishly looking to make sure that they find myself and eliminate me here in South Africa, and accuse the crime rate of NEGA in South Africa on a daily basis as the factor that could have caused my assassination here, and run away from it.
Ghana's President John Dramani Mahama has accused the administration of his U.S. counterpart, Donald Trump, of normalizing the erasure of black history. Mahama was speaking at an event on slavery reparations at the United Nations in New York. The BBC's Anna Pizarro has those details.
John Dramani Mahama said President Trump's executive orders had targeted institutions such as museums and national parks, directing them to remove so-called anti-American ideology. He said slavery exhibits had been dismantled, black history courses removed from school programs, and even books banned, obscuring the truth about slavery, segregation and racism. Later on Wednesday, the Ghanaian president will introduce a UN resolution to recognize transatlantic slavery as the gravest crime in the history of humankind.
Sudan's armed forces have been accused of targeting the largest hospital in East Darfur on the first day of Eid al-Fitr, the BBC's Richard Kigo reports.
Researchers at Yale's Humanitarian Research Lab in the U.S. say satellite images reveal 3 separate strikes on El Dain Teaching Hospital in East Darfur. They say the damage suggests a deliberate aerial attack on a facility located in an area controlled by the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces. Government buildings and a police station nearby were not affected, leading researchers to conclude that the hospital was specifically targeted. Sudan's military has denied responsibility. Both sides in Sudan's conflict have faced accusations of attacking civilian sites, acts that could amount to war crimes.
African Union chairperson Mahmoud Ali Yusuf has appointed former Tanzanian President Jakaya Kikwete as the AU High Representative for the Horn of Africa and the Red Sea. Kikwete is set to support the continental body's efforts to address the complex political, peace and security dynamics across the region. Kailihle Kumalo reports.
The AU is confident that Kikwete will make a significant contribution to support countries in the region in addressing prevailing challenges and advance durable peace. The AU adds that this is a vital engagement given the strategic importance of the Horn of Africa and the Red Sea for the international trade and the broader stability of the African continent. The AU High Representative will further work with the regional blocs such as IGAD, EAC, the League of Arab States, and other structures.
An Iranian military spokesperson, Ibrahim Zolfagari, has accused the United States of negotiating with itself over the conflict in the Middle East amid uncertainty over the prospects of meaningful peace talks. President Donald Trump has insisted his administration is talking to the right people in Iran and that they badly want a deal to end the war. More from the BBC's Joanna Keane.
In a video message broadcast on Iranian media, the spokesman doesn't mention the United States or President Trump, but talks about the self-proclaimed global superpower and warns someone like us will never come to terms with someone like you. The statement comes amid reports that a 15-point peace plan for reaching a ceasefire has been sent to Iran by the United States. It's said to include the dismantling of Iran's nuclear facilities in exchange for the lifting of sanctions, but there's been no confirmation of this. Amid the uncertainty, the conflict continues and oil prices remain volatile.
And finally, the United Nations General Assembly in New York is expected to consider a draft resolution that would unequivocally condemn the trafficking of enslaved Africans and the transatlantic slave trade as the most inhumane and enduring injustice against humanity. The draft text, seen by SABC News, also seeks to recognize the profound and lasting impacts of slavery and colonialism, Sharon Bryce Pease reports.
The initiative is spearheaded by Ghana and the Africa Group that earlier explained the draft resolution was the result of a clear continental mandate taken at the highest levels of the African Union. For over 400 years, more than 15 million Africans were victims of the transatlantic slave trade, described as one of the darkest chapters in human history. The proposed passage of the text today would be on the International Day of Remembrance for the victims of slavery and the transatlantic slave trade that offers the opportunity to honor those who suffered and died at the hands of a brutal slavery system. Ghana's President John Mahama said it sought to move the international community from acknowledgement to action, from recognition of historical injustice to a structured dialogue on repair.
Get the news, music, and lifestyle of Africa on Channel Africa, the African perspective. Tsepiso Makwetla winds it down on African World Hour, 9 to 10 p.m.
Channel Africa's first ever Africa Matters Summit heard that young people on the continent need to be included in efforts to address and tackle climate change challenges. The summit took place in Johannesburg, South Africa, bringing together thought leaders, researchers and other stakeholders to navigate the challenges around climate change. It was hosted under the theme Financing Africa's Recovery. Nhlanhla Mahlangu reports.
The highly anticipated Africa Matters Summit took place in Johannesburg, South Africa, marking a major milestone for Channel Africa as it hosted the event for the first time. Held in partnership with the Wits School of Governance, the summit brought together experts, policymakers and researchers to explore solutions for Africa to thrive amid climate change challenges. Dr. Sanele Gumede from the Department of Communications and Media at the University of Johannesburg says young people should not be excluded in conversations on climate change.
We are told we are the youngest continent, and I'm sure we are the youngest because we have the youngest population. We have many young people in the continent, and the future is with young people. So if we don't involve young people in the conversation on climate change, they wouldn't know how to preserve the environment and make sure that this planet called Earth that we live in is preserved for the future generations. So they need to be involved, and they feel they are left behind, especially when it comes to policy making, especially when it comes to deriving how climate change should be communicated to the public. They feel like they're left out.
The summit sought to engage and find solutions on critical issues of development in the African continent. Chief Executive at the South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Alan Mugogi, says when tackling climate change challenges, it's important to include issues such as infrastructure and its financing.
We believe very strongly funding the infrastructure, in particular that will be affected by climate change, is important. Energy systems, water and sanitation, including the building of bridges, by the way, and dams, because when you have these floods, that's what happens because people actually suffer. Telecoms infrastructure, very, very critical because, you don't want the entire country to shut down because there's been a negative climate event. But if you have your telecoms infrastructure in the sky, the technology of communications, production and destruction actually happens to sit in the sky with satellites. That's very important to invest in those kinds of things because you want to sustain society, even if there were challenges of adverse climate conditions.
While Africa contributes the least to climate change with less than 4% of the global greenhouse gas emissions, it is the hardest hit by its effects. Human rights and climate justice activist Kumi Naidoo says Africa is on the front line of a crisis it did not create, yet it is also a continent rich with solutions, resilience and imagination.
If Africa is to rise to the challenge of the moment, we need a pan-African approach. Individual countries cannot succeed on their own. So we need a regional blocks negotiating, getting common approaches and having a pan-African approach more generally because individual countries on the continent are too small to attract the scale of finance that we actually need to make a difference. The second thing we have to recognize is that we have to get off oil, coal and gas, fossil fuels as fast as possible, investing new fresh resources in new oil, coal and gas projects, which is 86% of what drives climate change, is completely nonsensical. It will hurt us. It will leave African governments with the reality that they could end up with stranded carbon assets, meaning they will invest a huge amount and suddenly the transition starts moving very fast towards clean energy, and they will be sitting with fossil fuel projects that they will run big losses on.
He says Africa can lead the world not just in response to crisis, but in shaping a new model of development rooted in equity, dignity, and sustainability. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Ndlandla Mahlangu in Johannesburg.
We are on Open Views Audio Bouquet. Channel 628. 1 hour, 1 continent, 1 voice. Africa World Hour with Tsepiso Makwetla on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
It is now 11 minutes past 9. South Africans are witnessing a major breakthrough as the country's justice system. This after the National Prosecuting Authority's Investigative Directorate Against Corruption arrested 12 senior police service officials in connection with $21.2 million US tender scandal. The arrests included general and 4 brigadiers who were fingered as central figures in the ongoing Madlanga Commission inquiry into police corruption. Let's look at these criminal syndicates, how they work, what should have been done to avoid the right. And to speak more about this, we're joined by a specialist offender profile, forensic criminologist, and CEO of Cybereti, Laurie Peter James. A very good evening to you, Laurie. Thank you so much for speaking to us.
Good evening to you and to your viewers, and it's only a pleasure to be here.
So, Laurie, I remember very clearly the last time you spoke, you were adamant that, this country is so rotten to the core that, you don't expect anything good out of that we're doomed. Does this give you hope?
Well, it gives me a little bit of hope. Look, the government was backed into a corner here. So they really have had no alternative but to save face and to act. And I think this has been a fantastic motivating factor. There will be these sacrificial lambs from this Madlanga Commission, but I'm very sure that where we arrest one, there are 3 waiting to take his place.
So the ones that have been arrested, the sacrificial lambs, as you call them, are they a good pick?
I think so. It's a good start. Obviously, I think there will be more arrests as things come to light and surface. But at least we are now targeting and sort of demanding some accountability from the higher ranked officials. And I mean, what we've got here is a general, a couple of brigadiers, a couple of colonels, and a captain. So it's all the higher ranking officers. And if we can start to instill some sort of top-down accountability, I think that would go a long way to start the process of reversing the systemic and endemic corruption that is evident in our justice system. So any move at the moment, I think, is a good move.
I mean, it almost sounds like a fruit basket, just listening to hear you talk, a general, a couple of brigadiers. But I want to look at these specific individuals. I mean, you spent years profiling complex offenders. Are they at the top enough first? The saying is that a fish rots from the top at the head. Are we close enough? Are we at the neck? Obviously, we're not at the very top because then...
We're not.
I mean, yeah. So just how close to where we need to be in terms of accountability are we? And let's look at these particular offenders, how they would have gotten here. And is it the system that corrupted them, or are we just saying that there's not enough quality screening of individuals who work for the police force?
Amusingly, one of the people arrested was the head of quality of SAPS. So that is quite an interesting one. Yes, exactly. So you know what the problem for me is that there needs to be more due diligence and more lifestyle audits going into prior to the appointment of these people. They should be very heavily screened. And what's evident also out of this is that there is no due diligence going into appointing these individuals. And as such, we're getting people appointed to positions that they really shouldn't hold. They're not qualified to hold. They shouldn't be there. And it's a giant mill, so to speak, because you've got another 10 waiting to take their place. And until we start looking at the proper qualifications, the proper due diligence before these people are appointed, we're also not going to solve the problem, because we've effectively taken 12 or however many we end up taking out of the system. We'll take them out. But who's waiting in the wings to replace them? And unfortunately, when you look at who's arrested, a lot of these people are appointed by the president. So ultimately, we have to look at our commander-in-chief and who he's appointing. Because if you look at the track record of the Commissioner of Polices and the Minister of Polices, they don't have a particularly good track record. And that's why I say you have to look from the top down. And the example has to be set from the top down.
But I want to look at the mechanics, though, firstly, before we look at the president's involvement, because obviously, as we mentioned, as we launched into this conversation, that these are almost mid to low-level officials. But I want to look at the vetting that takes place for policemen. What type of tests are done? I know they are psychometrics, etc., but do they meet the challenge of a culture, an internal culture that is not conducive to, should I say, honest service? Because in some cases you hear, and I'll use the Department of Home Affairs, and I'm sure many people can attest to this. It's been said many a times that the level of high-level, kingpins that have their hands in the pie at, Department of Home Affairs makes even people who are innocent feel scared about doing the right thing. So let's look at the type of vetting that is done for police officers, and does it meet? Is it fit for purpose, so to speak?
It's really not. And, a lot of these positions, there is no vetting going on. And I take you back to where some of the major problems originated, and that was when they drafted pre-World Cup. So they took in thousands of officers with no vetting whatsoever, and many of these officers remain in the police force. Many of them have criminal records. Many of them entered with criminal records because there was no vetting done prior to the World Cup when they surged the numbers for the World Cup. So that's also a problem. And a lot of the time, these appointments are jobs for friends, and there's no vetting done. It's cater deployment, again, on a massive scale. And once a general appoints somebody or says he wants somebody appointed, human resources at a captain level is not going to go against him. So unfortunately, a lot of these corrupt individuals actually escape the vetting process completely. But what needs to also happen on the vetting side is a lifestyle audit, because a lot of these people are appointed into the police in order to facilitate the commission of crime. And this is specific in the procurement divisions. And this is not just the police. This is Home Affairs, as you say. All the white-collar crime originates in the procurement divisions and in these panels that sit. So prior to being appointed to any panel, there should be an extensive lifestyle audit and extensive due diligence done on that individual. And that includes a social media screening, because these guys are a little bit silly. They post their wealth on Facebook, and if it doesn't align to the salary, it should be looked at. And, this is something that is not currently being done inside of SAPS, or in fact, inside of most government departments.
Mm. Thank you very much, Laurie. And I hope at some point we do talk about the extended arm of government, just in terms of financial management, because I do understand that at some level it is centralized. So what is failing? If we were saying that people, you spoke about lifestyle audits, but meritocracy is something that President Cyril Ramaphosa came into this tenure with saying that he is going to professionalize the police. Is there evidence that that is happening at all? Thank you so much for speaking to us. Much appreciated. Laurie Peters is a criminologist and also, as I mentioned, a profiler. Brings the time to 12 minutes past 9.
60 years of stories and sounds. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Franschhoek, get ready. The vibe is happening this March. The Monroe Jazz Festival Franschhoek is bringing more than 30 local and international acts for one unforgettable weekend, including DJ Zinke, DJ Kent, DJ Kent Zero, Layla Hathaway, Robert Glasper, and Bilal, plus many more. From 27 to 29 March 2026, experience the music, the culture, and the energy. Grab your tickets now at ticketmaster.co.za. Monroe Jazz Festival Franschhoek. Feel the energy. Live the moment.
Es-tu préoccupé par quelque chose? Es-tu passionné par les questions qui comptent? As-tu une voix qui mérite d'être entendue? Eh bien, nous avons la plateforme parfaite pour toi. Téléphone-nous ou fais-nous un WhatsApp au +27 66 408 87 42 et nous te rappellerons. Sois dans la conversation.
Salut Channel Africa, ici Beno le diamant rouge aka Binal Export depuis le Cameroun, le pays des lions. Voilà.
Sois dans la conversation. Il ne s'agit pas seulement de parler, mais c'est ta chance d'exprimer ton point de vue, de partager tes opinions et de t'engager avec une communauté qui valorise ton avis. Suivez-nous sur les réseaux sociaux, visitez notre site www.channelafrica.co.za et préparez-vous à partager vos points de vue sur Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Get the news, music, and lifestyle of Africa on Channel Africa, the African perspective. Tsepiso Makwetla winds it down on African World Hour, 9 to 10 p.m.
Hopes of a rate cut have faded as the conflict in the Middle East, which has entered a fourth week, now keeps oil prices elevated. The South African Reserve Bank says it widely expects to keep the repo rate unchanged at 6.75% tomorrow as central banks adopt a more hawkish view. This comes amid rising inflation risks driven by the sustained high oil prices following the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. SABC News economics reporter Nosipho Khatebe reports.
Analysts are anticipating a shift in tone from the South African Reserve Bank as the recent spike in oil prices threatens to derail the inflation outlook. At its last meeting before the tension in the Middle East, the central bank had struck a cautious tone, holding steady while assessing whether inflation would continue to ease towards its 3% target. Investec chief economist Annabel Bishop explains the risks.
The risk is if we don't get no change, which is really about an 80% expectation, the risk would then be for a small hike. So in other words, no possibility of a cut. A small hike, even though it's not expected, would maybe preemptive in terms of higher inflationary pressures. Again, really not expected. So I think the Reserve Bank will obviously look at its inflation forecast. It'll probably redo it. It will look at its oil price forecast, which was at $65 a barrel, now over $100 a barrel. That will feed into its inflation models. And so we'll see changes in those types of forecasts. Even for the domestic currency, there's been about 5% weakness on a trade-weighted basis, which impacts inflation since the war. And besides its effective basis, of course, as well, there's also been weakness against the US dollar because of its safe haven status. So we do expect to see a revision of all the numerical forecasts.
Bishop says the outlook remains unclear due to the uncertainty around the tensions.
Obviously, we have seen the escalation in the war in the Middle East. And, the uncertainty partly comes in terms of how long will it last? What will be the impact on the oil price? And, of course, what will be the impact on supply of petroleum products, oil, and, in fact, other goods needed, other commodities such as agricultural chemicals like fertilizer. Of course, we often see these feedstocks from oil also in plastic and many polymers, solvents, all sorts of things industry uses. But also, of course, talking about industry, South Africa's economy is energy intensive. And our supply chain relies very heavily on diesel.
Inflation slowed to 3% last month, in line with the SARB's target, but this was before the Middle East conflict escalated. Nosipho Khatebe, SABC News, Johannesburg.
And that brings the time to 26 minutes past 9. You are listening to Africa World Hour. Remember that you can listen to Channel Africa anytime, anywhere, simply by downloading the Channel Africa app from your Play Store, or you can also stream us live on Facebook and YouTube at Channel Africa on Facebook, at Channel Africa 1 on YouTube. Moving on to other stories now, South Africa's Banyana Banyana will play Algeria in 2 international friendly matches next month in preparation for the 2026 Women's Africa Cup of Nations tournament in Morocco. The Women's Continental Tournament that was supposed to be staged in Morocco this month was postponed to July. In preparation, Banyana head coach Desiree Ellis has named her squad that will do duty against the North Africans on 14 and 17 April. Tutuzi Ndlovu has more.
Banyana had a training camp in Polokwane during last month's COSAFA Cup tournament. For that tournament, Ellis selected a squad consisting of local players, and they lost in the final to Namibia. Despite the defeat, she was impressed with what she saw, and she has included a number of them in the side that will take on Algeria.
I was very impressed with the younger group, with the new group coming in. For some of them, it was the first time. For the younger group as well, stepping up from U17, U20. I think they're getting younger by the day, if you look at it. Showed no fear, competed with everyone else. I think the future is very bright for South African football.
A notable absentee in the 24-player squad is stalwart Thembi Kgatlana. The forward, who plies her trade in Mexico, was omitted due to a lack of fitness. Most of the other overseas-based players are part of the squad. They include midfield maestro Linda Mutlalo of Glasgow City and the 2022 WAFCON Final 2 goal hero Hilda Machaia, who plays for Deportivo in Spain. And Ellis hopes these players will step up when they take on Algeria.
Over the last year, we've played a lot of teams that have challenged us physically. Algeria is similar to Morocco, very organized. During WAFCON, sometimes played with a low block, and I think that's a challenge also to break down that low block. But also they're very good on the counter, very good possession-wise. So it will really challenge us. We have to be tactically disciplined.
After the matches against Algeria, Banyana will shift their focus to former world champions, Japan, whom they will face in June. The trip to Japan will be followed by the WAFCON tournament, where Banyana are in Group B with Tanzania and 2 West African nations, Burkina Faso and Ivory Coast. For SABC News, I am Mtutuzi Ndlovu in Johannesburg.
Let's continue now with news making headlines and interesting developments just around geopolitics. After almost 2 years of helping Haiti's security forces rein in armed gangs, the international security mission led by Kenya has begun withdrawing a group of 115 Kenyan police officers who formed the second contingent of the multinational security support mission arrived in Nairobi recently as the mission began transitioning to a United Nations-backed force, the Gang Suppression Force. The shift comes amid criticism of Haiti's exclusion from planning and ongoing security challenges. The Kenyan-led mission was deployed in June 2024 to support the Haitian National Police in combating armed gangs. It will be replaced by troops from Chad. To speak about this further, we speak to Diego de Rin, Haiti analyst at the Crisis Group, joining us now from Mexico. Very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us, Diego.
Thank you for having me.
Let's just first start with the actual deployment itself. I'm thinking back to 2018, watching Kenya's President William Ruto partake in a conversation, and that was still very much at the asking stages, but he was very enthusiastic in lending a hand. But there were critics of the decision saying they don't see why Kenya should be taking up this challenge. What are your thoughts about initially the decision to take part in this deployment, and your assessment of how that has panned out?
Well, it was extremely brave for Kenyan police officers to go to Haiti to help the Haitian security forces that are severely underfunded and under-equipped to tackle Haiti's most severe security threat that it has had in the past decades. The gangs have grown increasingly independent from the elites that created them and have been defying the authorities in an unprecedented way. They control most of the capital. They overthrown the government in 2004, and they have been trying to topple the government again since then. And the Kenyan officers helped the Haitian police to at least slow down the advance of the gangs in the capital and in other regions of the country where they are expanding their foothold. But the Kenyan-led mission never had sufficient funding to really implement the security strategy that it had devised to support the Haitian security forces. It was estimated that the mission should be funded by 600 million a year, but it just received a fraction of these funds, which made that it was enabled to establish all the forward operating bases, to have permanent presence in all the gang-controlled areas, as it hoped to had. So now we are transitioning to a new kind of mission with the authorization of a gang suppression force by the UN Security Council last September.
So please explain this change for me and what makes it strategic. And I'm talking about the fact that Kenya was first at the center of this international security mission. Now they're scaling back. What has happened?
Well, the countries that were mostly the ones that planned the Kenyan-led mission, along with the Kenyan government, understood that the mission was not going very well because the main obstacle was the lack of funds. So the US and Panama proposed a new kind of mission to the Security Council last year that would overcome these obstacles to have sufficient funding. Now, most of the funds for the new mission will be channeled by the assessed contribution of the UN peacekeeping budget. This will make that this new mission will have more reliable funding. Another difference with the previous mission is that the gang suppression force will be led by militaries. This will be mostly a military-led military operation and not a police-led mission. So it has a much more robust mandate, and it can also, contrary to the Kenyan-led mission, it is not only mandated to help the Haitian police to conduct Haitian police-led operations, but it can also mount operations independently from the Haitian police, because there are just a few hundred Haitian police officers that are skilled and equipped to go into combat against the gangs. So this will be a mission that will have more reliable funding, a more robust mandate, and much more personnel. The Kenyan-led mission never made it to 1,000 officers. The new mission is expected to have 5,500 officers on the ground by October this year.
But I guess what I'm trying to understand is the rationale. Why Kenya would send its police officers there. And as you say, that the change now is about deploying military officials. And one would have thought that's where the start point would have been. And also, yes, it's important to come to the aid of a country like Haiti that is overridden by crippling gangsterism. But why did Kenya see itself as intervening with its police force?
Well, the US approached several countries asking them to contribute personnel for the mission that they were proposing to help the Haitian security forces at least counter the gang offensives and weaken the gangs in Haiti. And Kenya was the country that at that moment was the only one who stepped forward to help in this endeavor in Haiti. The U.S. also tried to convince Canadian officials to take the lead of the mission and other countries, but Kenya was perceived as a country that has contributed in several international security efforts, in many international security operations, and that had special police units that were sufficiently skilled to tackle this security threat in Haiti. Kenyan officials also put forward that Haiti was seen by the African Union as a country that had cultural and historical ties to African countries, and that at a moment when no country was stepping forward to help Haiti in tackling the gang violence, Kenya was a country that was willing to do this.
Indeed, I mean, the Caribbean has a large number of African diaspora, those who obviously have left Africa unwillingly, who were stolen from their families, their land of birth, and enduring centuries of very cruel treatment. But what we're seeing now is the withdrawal of Kenya and the entry of Chad. I guess I'm still trying to grapple with the understanding of what is happening here. Is it a statement also on Kenya's leadership intervention, or is it simply that we're just saying, well, we've given you as much as we can in terms of our own internal resources, let somebody else pick up the slack?
Well, as I was saying earlier, the Kenyan-led mission was essentially a police force that was led by a police commander, a Kenyan police commander. This new mission has a mandate that enables the new force to be much more offensive than the previous one. So even if this will be carried out in legal terms as a law enforcement effort, this will be a military-led operation. And so the several contingents of Kenyan officers that were deployed in Haiti were, yes, of course, from special units, but essentially from the police. Most of the police officers, around 5,000 of the 5,500 that will be deployed under the new mission, will be military units. So the mission is changing in nature, and Kenya is for that reason, essentially, withdrawing its troops, because
no, I understand
the
that.
mission is...
I guess the point I'm asking is, does it speak to the sustainability of the approach that was undertaken in the first place, the realistic nature of trying to restore order given the previous shortfalls?
Well, it remains to be seen if the new mission, with the new financing framework that it has, will have sufficient support to make a difference on the ground. Because the problem right now is that the Haitian security forces, with an improved collaboration between several security bodies that are operating on the ground, have been able to make some successive operations against the gangs recently, but they don't have sufficient personnel to have a holding capacity in the territories that they would be able to regain, to recapture from the gangs. So even though the Haitian security forces are now able to strike more effectively than in the past, with new tactics that they are developing on the ground, they don't have this holding capacity. So the arrival of over 5,000 troops in support of the Haitian security forces should enable them to have a more serious strategy to recapture permanently these territories from the gangs, and not only make incursions in the strongholds and withdraw because they don't have this holding capacity.
All right. Thank you so much for speaking to us. We're just looking at Kenya's deployment to Haiti. Diego Durin is a Haitian analyst at the Crisis Group, speaking to us from Mexico about the new broadened mandate, which he says is more militaristic in nature, and was focusing on Kenya because it's withdrawing, it's scaling back its deployment of its police officials and moving in now in terms of African-led intervention will be Chad. It's sending 800 military officers according to the intervention that we have to help fight those marauding gangs in Haiti.
Get the news, music, and lifestyle of Africa on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Es-tu préoccupé par quelque chose? Es-tu passionné par les questions qui comptent? As-tu une voix qui mérite d'être entendue? Eh bien, nous avons la plateforme parfaite pour toi. Téléphone-nous ou fais-nous un WhatsApp au +27 66 408 87 42 et nous te rappellerons. Sois dans la conversation.
Salut Channel Africa, ici Beno le diamant rouge et Binal Sport depuis le Cameroun, le pays des lions. Voilà.
Sois dans la conversation. Il ne s'agit pas seulement de parler, mais c'est ta chance d'exprimer ton point de vue, de partager tes opinions et de t'engager avec une communauté qui valorise ton avis. Suivez-nous sur les réseaux sociaux, visitez notre site www.channelafrica.co.za et préparez-vous à partager vos points de vue sur Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Tsepiso Makwetla winds it down on African World Hour, 9 to 10 p.m.
It is now 18 minutes to 9. I guess I want to stay on a little bit longer. And it's time now for our 2140 feature. And today, we are stepping into the heart of South Africa's Eastern Cape province and the rich history of a small town with a big legacy. We're speaking to Eugene Bernard, known affectionately to his friends and family as Boise, growing up in the Indwe during the 1960s. Eugene went on to have distinguished 4-decade career as an architect, arbitrator and mediator, but it is his deep-seated passion for heritage and storytelling that brings him here today. He has spent years meticulously researching the roots of his hometown, a journey that has culminated into his 2-volume work, The Indwens, comprising his books The Tale of Tom and Alice and Heart of My Hometown. To talk about these, we are joined by Eugene Bernard, as I mentioned. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us.
Good evening, Tsepiso. Thank you for having me. It's a privilege.
No, it's a privilege for us to speak to somebody who is, I mean, oftentimes we keep these memories to ourselves, forgetting that memory work is so important, not only preserving culture, but teaching future generations of what their heritage is. So for you, what really brought it together to say, this is where I ought to start and this is how I'm going to help people see the world that I've lived in, what I see?
Yes, well, it all started probably about 15 years ago when I started researching my own ancestry, and I wanted to provide my children and my grandchildren with not a family tree, but a narrative of where we come from and essentially how I came to be what I am. And in the process of telling the story of my own family and how they arrived in the village of Indwi 120, 130 years ago, it's about 125 years now, I then realized that there were 2 stories to be told, and I started researching the history of Indwi and the community who lived there. And I felt an urge. I knew that someone had to tell the story, because if no one told the story, the history and the detail would just get lost.
What stories?
And that's how.
What stories did you see as having to had be told? And if you could also just relate that to how you also got your childhood name of Boysen and what role it plays in interacting with those two stories.
Yes, well, okay, just a bit of background. In a sense, I have three names, and not three separate identities, but three connotations. My name on my birth certificate is Eugene, and most people know me by that. When I left school and I went to university, everyone knew me as Eugene. When I was a baby, I apparently was a very chubby baby, and my grandfather, who had a training station, general dealership in Indwi from the early 1900s, he was fluent in isiXhosa, and he gave me the name Mafuta. So my cousins all knew me as Mafuta, the fat little boy, but I shed that when I was a few years old. And then the third name is the name Boise. And I was called Boise for all the years that I lived in Indwi. So anyone I speak to who knew me in those years can relate to the name Boise. And so when I started writing the story about my family and about the town of Indwi, I felt I had to write it under the pen name of Boise, because all my memories were linked to that name, and the fabric of the town and the community is woven into that name.
I guess then the question becomes, those three characters, when they look out from the heart of your home, do they see the world differently, or do those names reflect what you see, from the inside out, the world that you are seeing outside? Because I'm thinking of your generation when you grew up within a community like that. Integration would be forced, so to speak, and it's been gradual. But given this particular generation, how they would experience Indwe now would be different. So I just want to see through the window of the eyes of those three characters, and how they would reflect Indwe.
Yes, it's been a wonderful process, and the names have converged in a sense, because through the research that I've done and just writing about my childhood and about the town of Indwi and the community in which I grew up, given the research, it's really put that into perspective. So the child, the boy Mafuta, or the boy Boise, has now started viewing that history through the eyes of Eugene, and it's made so much sense, so much more sense now. I grew up, as you would know, in the 1950s, 1960s, in a very different world to which we are in today. And I didn't, when you grow up, you think the world in which you've been born into has always been that way, and it will always remain that way. But now, in being able to look at Indwi as it was before I was born, I've been able to research the Khoisan in the district, the caves, the stories of the Tembu, or the Tambukis as they were known then. They were there before we were there, and how relocations occurred in the late 1800s in the early 1900s, after the First World War, when relocation had to happen for the sake of the returning soldiers from the First World War. And yes, it's had a wonderful impact on how I view history and the whole process of developing new and fresh understandings.
So how do you view history? I'd like to hear more from you, the transition of those three names. And I'm thinking of architecture as an explainer, because you spoke about those times growing up. There's a certain naivete, there's a certain innocence as a child. I mean, if we look at how houses denote a social strata, as children growing up, it was on a very basic level. And I want to hear from an architect's eye how that story has been told, and not sometimes through design, but also just functionality of those dwellings.
Maybe I was born with an inclination to want to put things into context, and so as an architect, you always go back to the fundamentals, the foundations, the conditions of the ground, the soil in which you're going to build, the environment in which you're going to design. So,
okay, Eugene, seem to be having a bit of trouble. I definitely wanted to continue this conversation. Let's see if we can attend to it and get you to log in again, because it's a very interesting conversation that our viewers or listeners would like to hear more from. So, okay, I understand that the line has improved. So you're saying you tend to be pragmatic about your profession and how it informs your worldview.
And also to contextualize the challenges, to look at all constraints that impact design.
Okay, it looks like I was a little bit too optimistic. Let's see if we can get you back, Eugene, speaking to us about his works, 2 volumes written about Indwe. And he's just telling us how the life there has been the building blocks of documenting Indwe, its people, its history. We're going to take a quick break.
Contactez-nous sur nos réseaux sociaux. Facebook, Channel Africa, Instagram, Channel Africa 1, Twitter, @Channel Africa, avec le hashtag Vue d'Afrique, hashtag Mix Vibration. WhatsApp pour les textes et audio au +27 66 40 88 742. Es-tu préoccupé par quelque chose? Es-tu passionné par les questions qui comptent? As-tu une voix qui mérite d'être entendue? Eh bien, nous avons la plateforme parfaite pour toi. Téléphone-nous ou fais-nous un WhatsApp au +27 66 408 87 42 et nous te rappellerons. Sois dans la conversation.
Salut Channel Africa, ici Beno le diamant rouge et Binal Sport depuis le Cameroun, le pays des lions. Voilà.
Sois dans la conversation. Il ne s'agit pas seulement de parler, mais c'est ta chance d'exprimer ton point de vue, de partager tes opinions et de t'engager avec une communauté qui valorise ton avis. Suivez-nous sur les réseaux sociaux, visitez notre site www.channelafrica.co.za et préparez-vous à partager vos points de vue sur Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Tsepiso Makwetla winds it down on African World Hour, 9 to 10 p.m.
So this is indeed Channel Africa, the African perspective. And you would know that perspective is as diverse as are the number of towns, cities, and countries in Africa. Africa is not a country, as the tongue-in-cheek statement often is. You would know as an African that you'd be asked, while you are from, say, Malawi, if you know somebody in Abuja who is a friend of theirs. So we are speaking to an architect and author, Eugenie, who is speaking to us about the works that he's done on his town of Indwe. Eugene, so that we don't waste too much time. So you were saying context is everything for you as an architect. When you look at your life through that window, you're saying the importance of the foundations, the structures, and how they express your worldview of your life there in Indwe.
Yes, and I think that's flowed into the work that I've done now with the two books. I have both in terms of looking at my own family, but also looking at Indwe, and the community there. I've tried to put it into context and understand, the context that gave rise to the exploitation of coal. Because Indwe really was established because of the coal fields in the district, and how that impacted on relocation of the Tambukis who were living there, and how various groups then came and saw the town as the place of dreams, really, because it was one of the towns in that region that was booming at the time. Yes, and so that whole process takes us through the 1900s, and then towards, let's say, the late 1970s, late 1980s. Now, portions of the town, Guba and parts of the district were consolidated back to the Transkei, and how those changes occurred. Yeah.
Eugene, just a quicker final one, and I wish we'd had more time. So, I mean, as a teaser to anybody who wants to have access to your books, what are they getting? How do you describe, or what does your research reflect about the town's history? And how do you feel about this massive undertaking that you have made? Has it has it given you the fruit, your harvest that you had anticipated?
Absolutely. For me, just to be able to have the information available, the book on my family, look, it's more personal, but it does give you a context of that era. But the book of Indwe it's over 500 pages long. It contains photographs that are not available anywhere. It's personal photographs that I've received from people. I've spoken to over 100 Indians, and they've provided me with information and photographs. I am thrilled, Tsepiso. I must say, it was a calling, because I knew that if it wasn't done, it would never be done. So for me, I just feel, wow, at least now the history of the town that I'm passionate about has been recorded for posterity. I'm thrilled.
Well, thank you for that. As I mentioned, you are making a deposit into the annals of history, the memory work that we need to not only preserve our culture, but have a better understanding of our inheritance as South Africans, or the people of Indwe whom you've written about. Thank you very much, South African author, architect, arbitrator and mediator Eugene Bernard. And we're going straight into African Diaries. Speaking of writing books, so see what a nice segue into speaking to an author. African Diaries. Come on, keep up with me.
Ma'am, it's been a long day, okay? A very long day, but I'm with you. That's actually really beautiful. In the first hour, we talk all things yoni healing. So how we can...
Like the right that you only healing motion.
Ma'am.
No, but it's
you must
important.
be
It's very, very important.
Cleansed so that you can have fun times. Essentially, that's what we're going with. And then in the second hour of the show, Chef Neo helps us dine for two. And this from the leisure of your own home. So if you want to prepare a special meal for your special somebody, Chef Neo's got us.
No spaghetti bolognese, guys. A lot of people don't get it right. Let's not even venture into that.
Yeah, no, leave it alone.
You know?
It's okay. We'll try other things. No, I've seen... Yeah, no, let me preserve
Even you go
the
to a
name.
restaurant and you're like, tomato paste in this, what do you call this, fricadelles? Hey, man, guys, can you just spare us? Anyhow, Shayla, darling, we leave you to write some more in your diaries.
No. What
But
do you
know what I'm
mean?
talking about, eh?
It's the tomato paste and fricadelles for me. I can see it.
You can see it
I
and you
can
can
actually
taste
see
it, ne?
Yeah, ma'am. No, we give that one up. Give that plate up.
Leave
I don't
it
order it
alone.
anymore.
Ne?
It's just not working
It's
out.
like lasagna. I'm so picky about it.
Really?
Yes. I make a mean lasagna, if I do say so myself.
Okay.
So when I get these, I say insipid because it really tastes like it needs a whole lot of tomato sauce for me to get through it.
Yeah.
Just lost dating.
It's fine. We can try this stuff out. But I do hope that Chef Neo can give us a few tips and tricks on how to rectify that as well.
And also what's nice and simple.
Because, I mean, if you want to prepare a special meal, think about this. This is your person or someone you're trying to impress with food. Are you going to be simplistic about it?
You don't have to be simplistic. But what I'm saying is you can make a delicious dish that is simple to make.
Fair.
You know
That
what
is
I'm
fair.
saying? So lovely recipe, I think, where they had spaghetti in it, had salmon. And they just had like a... I think it's spinach and mushroom, creamy sauce on top. Sounds nice. Doesn't
Just
sound
like a
like
chicken
it's
wrap.
too...
Just...
That's how we come to the end of Africa World. African Diaries up next with Shayla Ndikuman.
6 decades strong, Channel Africa continues to inspire Africa and the world.